Should I go upright like that? Yeah, I guess I will. Sorry, this cord's in the way. Okay, I'm going to read the next section 3 of this great book I just got in the mail. I love these little teeny hardcovers. It's like a freaking, you could almost fit it in your pocket if you had a jacket pocket or something. But I'm on section 3, which is page... Dude, he has 4 pages of graphs, COVID-19 deaths after vaccination programs. So in every one of these maps, it shows a extreme spike right after they released the COVID jabs in the countries that took the COVID jabs. So exactly the opposite of what they claimed. It was safe and effective. They never define what safe and effective means, because safe means if you invest in them, you're safe. You're safe return because we have no liability if anyone dies and kills over on the sport field. We have full immunity. So it's safe to investors to invest in us because it's effective in making you massive profits for killing people. I guess that's what safe and effective means. Okay. So, section 3. Contrary to official promises, the vaccine did not prevent infection or transmission. Okay. Now, you might recall... Hold on, I gotta cancel this one because I know it's one I'm not going to want to take because it's not paying me enough and it's too far away. I'm not going to go to the outlet store fucking 6 to 7 for $25. It's all the way down by the border. Kids, see you later, alligators. Peace out. Love you. Don't let the door slap you on the ass on the way out. Okay, back to this. You might recall that government officials like Dr. Anthony Fauci and influential medical quote-unquote experts like Bill Gates. He's not a medical expert. He's a freaking psychopath. Initially sold us the vaccine only, in quotes, solution to COVID by claiming that the vaccine would immunize against infection and prevent transmission, thereby ending the pandemic. By June 2022, when Anthony Fauci caught COVID-19 following his 4th vaccination, officials had long since dropped their once implacable claim that COVID-19 vaccine would prevent COVID-19. Can you imagine? I'm going to steal from Jimmy Dore's. I just paid $10 on his website to watch his new special, and it was great. And in it, he says, what does he say? Can you imagine if we took the polio vaccine and we got polio after it, or we took the freaking measles vaccine and got measles after it? It never happened in all the history of vaccines, but this one didn't prevent the spread. So what does safe and effective mean? And they keep repeating this line, even though they don't tell us the definition, because we know they keep changing the definition of everything. Like vaccine is no longer what a vaccine used to be defined as, something that stops the spread. However, some authorities continue to suggest that the jabs could reduce COVID-19 spread. This is just a suggestion. This is just a marketing gimmick. There's no scientific evidence they ever prove this is the case. I was in sales for 15 years. I know about marketing gimmicks. They usually are not true. You just say it because that's the sales pitch. Because all these are is salespeople, these freaking so-called newscasters with the brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, MSNBC, brought to you by Pfizer, ABC News, brought to you by Pfizer, CNN, brought to you by Pfizer, Fox News, brought to you by Pfizer. That's not news, that is propaganda. However, some authorities continue to suggest that the jabs could reduce the spread of COVID-19. They should have known better. Instagram deplatformed me. They also deplatformed me in 2021, a little after they deplatformed him, for pointing out that the vaccine industry's money studies in May of 2020 made these claims doubtful. Vaccinated monkeys both caught and transmitted COVID with the same frequency as unvaccinated primates. The real-world human data have since forced even the vaccine's most avid promoters to admit that their initial claims were false. This short video shows Dr. Fauci, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, Bill Gates, and other leading promoters adamantly insisting that the vaccines will prevent infection, even though we were working at the speed of science. Of course we didn't check if it stops the spread. All we were worried about is getting the dollars, the money, the big bucks. Okay, Bill Gates and other leading promoters adamantly insisted that the vaccines will prevent infection, transmission, and death and end the pandemic. You will then hear these same trusted authorities gradually shift the goalposts, finally admitting that vaccines can prevent neither COVID nor its spread. We liberals need to ask ourselves this question. If the vaccinated are equally likely to spread COVID as the unvaccinated, as Dr. Fauci now acknowledges, then on what basis do we justify the draconian mandates that denied unvaccinated workers their jobs, children's their education, and engaged the bullying and bigotry that made the unvaccinated reviled second-class citizens? And he puts two studies after it. The initial getting excited here. The irrational, stigmatizing, and outright bigotry is real and global. Today, American hospitals routinely deny life-saving care to Americans based on their vaccination status. In June 2022, for example, a Vanderbilt University Hospital heart transplant surgeon refused to add a mortally ill 6-month-old baby boy named August to the transplant recipient list because the parents declined to fully vaccinate him. That is absolutely insane. 6 months old should not be experimented on if they don't even have the knowledge on what they're being experimented on, and they can't be given consent, which is reading all the thousands of side effects that these vaccines have that they won't tell you usually. They'll just say, oh, there's a list. They won't even usually say. You have to know that yourself, which is against the protocols of any study, because you're all being studied on. When you go to get these vaccines, no matter who's injected into your arm, even if it's a nurse at CVS, they're required by law to inform you and make sure you're informed that this is a study. We do not yet have a double-blind study of all the people that have taken it because we blinded them as soon as it was approved for experimental use. Okay. I'm going to read that part again. Okay. Including the experimental COVID-19 shot based on medical and religious grounds. So, an agreement was eventually reached after much public outcry, and now baby August is currently on the transplant list to receive a heart. This is 44th footnote so far. I'm not going to go read them all because it's like his footnotes are all these studies and the web pages they're from. And it starts on his footnotes, endnotes. It starts on, so this thing ends at 100, and it looks like, based on the size of the book, oh yeah, it says the numbers. So there are 28 pages of footnotes, which is 383 studies or cited articles and shit. Okay, where was I? Should not such a baseless act of brutality against infants offend every liberal's conscience? I don't think many people that call themselves liberal, especially in the so-called liberal media, which is actually fascist, it's anything but liberal. Those people think they're liberal. They're not, because they don't have a conscience anymore. They're just fucking puppets, sock puppets for the corporations that are feeding them billions of dollars. Leading liberals endorse the exclusion of unvaccinated people from civil rights, including jobs, education, and transportation. The ACLU has called for expanded censorship to silence government critics. The ACLU used to be standing up for the rights of people, but now it's a fascist organization. Even the left's iconic guru, Noam Chomsky. I liked Noam Chomsky up until this pandemic, and I liked Neil Young up until this pandemic, but they all became fucking walking zombies, as far as I'm concerned, on the vaccine issue. So even the left's icon guru, Noam Chomsky, has recommended the exclusion of the unvaccinated from society. As to food, he says, well, that's actually their problem. That just disgusts me. I used to really think he was a person that stood up for human rights and social justice, but now I know he's just a fucking... He's become... And I blame it on his old age. He's too old to be freaking still making commentary if he's that stupid to think these experimental products should be forced on people. That's against Nuremberg trial protocols. Okay. Australia is only one of multiple countries that confine unvaccinated, infected, and exposed citizens to internment camps. And he has 2 footnotes on that, 47 and 48. Meanwhile, Austria adopted a slightly more humane option of confining unvaccinated citizens to house arrest. And he puts 2 footnotes there, 49 and 50. Governments across Asia, Africa, and the world banned protests and dissent, authorized extreme forms of opposition. This is against the United States Constitution. You can't ban protests. It's freedom of assembly, but they did for all churches, which is against the Constitution, which there's nowhere in the Constitution, as this great author constantly says, that has an exception for pandemics, because they've had pandemics throughout history, and it's never made the Constitution null and void like they did during this COVID coup. Okay. Governments across Asia, Africa, and the world banned protests and dissent, authorized extreme forms of oppression, and jailed thousands. I'm glad I lived in San Diego, because I never stayed on house arrest one day. Even when I had COVID, I went out every day. Got in the sun, got in the sauna, got in my roller skates on. Rasmussen poll data show widespread liberal support for confining the unvaccinated and taking away their children. And that's footnote 53. Because of the officially enforced bigotry against unvaccinated people, and considering the long history of invoking pretense of contagion disease infectivity to justify segregation laws against displaced minorities, don't we as liberals have a special duty to independently investigate government claims that unvaccinated people are more likely to spread contagions? Consider the April 19, 2022 Gridiron dinner in Washington, D.C. 72 prominent partygoers who all had to show proof of vaccination tested positive for COVID after the event. Both Dr. Fauci and Dr. Walensky attended the party. That same week, COVID-19 infected some 200 passengers during the Carnival Cruise Line voyage, on which all passengers and crew members were fully vaccinated. Shouldn't the Gridiron and Carnival Cruise super spreader events have made clear to everyone that the vaccine prevent neither cases nor spread, as acknowledged by these public health leaders since August of 2021, and that's footnote 59. The director of both the CDC and the NIAID acknowledged that the dubious supposition that the unvaccinated are more likely to be silent spreader is unsupported by science, and that's footnote 60. This is section 4. In contrast to official claims that they are safe and effective, COVID vaccines appear to show negative efficacy. So if you're going to say safe and effective, that's not a medical term. You should say if they really work, they're safe and efficacious. That's a medical term. Effective is just whatever effect you want. And Pfizer wants to make billions of dollars, so yes, it is effective in making billions of dollars off killing people, but it's not efficacious, which is the medical term. So negative efficacy means that it actually works more negatively than it works positively, making the vaccinated more susceptible to COVID, which is called pathogenic priming. So the reason why flu seasons all go up is because people take the flu vaccines. I've never taken a flu vaccine, so I hardly ever get the flu. I've only started getting the flu since COVID because I probably did that. I went to one of the universities and they did that swab up my nose to check if I had COVID. And after that, I all of a sudden started getting flus every flu season. I've never got them in my life, hardly ever. Like maybe every 4 years I'll get a little bit of a flu, but it's like a little, very little. I sleep a day and it goes away. So every time you take a flu shot, you're going to increase your chance of getting a flu because that's called... And even Dr. Fauci before this pandemic admitted that, and there's videos of that if you go look on YouTube. I think they haven't scrubbed them all from YouTube yet. If they are, you can find them on Rumble and other less fascist sites. Okay, here we go. More alarming are recent data from Israel. This is footnote 61. Sweden, footnote 62. And the UK's National Health Service database, footnote 63. The New Zealand Ministry of Health database, 64, footnote, and Qatar, footnote 65. You can go look at all those websites and footnotes if you want. I'm sure they'll be online somewhere. If not, I'll make a copy of them. Okay, email me. I'll send you a copy. Take pictures of it. Among these is a large peer-reviewed Swedish study published June 2022 in The Lancet, which confirmed that vaccine efficacy drops into negative territory 7 to 9 months after vaccination. So you're more likely to get COVID 7 to 9 months after vaccine than you were if you didn't become a guinea pig for mad scientists like I didn't, because I didn't believe the corporate news before the pandemic. So why would I believe the corporate news during the pandemic when I know they've lied about Syria, Iraq, Iran, Venezuela, they've lied about Cuba, they've lied about, I have my hands full all the lies that I've studied in the corporate media. I stopped watching them in 1989 because I realized they were lying to me back in my 18th year of life in this body. Okay. So this Lancet study, which confirmed the vaccine efficacy drops into negative territory 7 to 8 months after vaccination. This means the vaccine is effectively contributing to more infections, which is exactly what they wanted. So they can continue the lockdown, so they can continue the brainwashing, so they can continue the fear-mongering. Okay, he shows a whole graph study here. I'm not going to go read it all. I'm bored with graphs. I already know. I muscle tested that this is about 900, 950, 951. So this book's 950, according to my muscle testing. You tell me what your muscle testing gets you, because you should get about at least 20 people doing muscle testing to get a really accurate number of 0 to 1,000, which is the based on the book Power versus Force on Enlightenment. Enlightenment is 1,000, 0 is like hell, and this book's about 950. So every book is not 100% enlightened. These studies and the New York State Health Department's database, footnote 66, corroborate the early fears initially voiced by Dr. Fauci in footnote 67 and by leading vaccine developers and promoters, including Dr. Peter Hotez, footnote 68, and Dr. Paul Offit, footnote 69. These are the official COVIDian mouthpieces for pharmacology, for the cult of pharmacology, that improperly tested COVID vaccines could do permanent damage to the human immune system, footnote 70, paradoxically raising the risk of infection and death from COVID. In March 2020, Dr. Fauci, this is footnote 71, along with Drs. Hotez and Offit, the three musketeers of the COVID coup, warned, based on extensive historical experience with experimental coronavirus vaccines, that COVID jabs, through the mechanism of pathogenic priming, also known as antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, might make vaccinated individuals more susceptible to COVID rather than less. True to these predictions, the COVID vaccine benefits appear to wane rapidly, drifting across the threshold into negative efficacy after about 6 months. This is footnote 72. This means that vaccinated individuals then become more likely to suffer from COVID infection, hospitalization, and deaths than unvaccinated individuals. Thank you very much. That's why I only experienced COVID once before the vaccines came and rolled out. An analysis of Moderna. You notice how Moderna is actually mod RNA, which is what these RNA are not messenger RNA. They are modified RNA. They are modified nucleic acid. That's why Moderna, if you take out the mod and the RNA at the end, it's Moderna, modified RNA. An analysis of Moderna's randomized controlled trials published in May of 2022 based on joint research from scientists at a number of prestigious health institutions shows that mRNA, not messenger RNA, but modified RNA, vaccines may actually impair the immune system's ability to fight COVID-19 long term. This is footnote 73 and 74. Post-mass vaccination data from government databases around the world support this troubling finding that vaccinated individuals are more likely to become COVID infected. So my wife worried about me coming to Japan up until finally now I'm going this month. She's finally given up on her COVIDness. I wish I lived with my daughter and wife during this pandemic, but I don't think I could have handled it because my wife is an extreme germaphobe even before the pandemic. And she believes everything the government tells her in Japan, not knowing that the government is just as bought and paid for by pharmaceutical corporations and military industrial contractors as the U.S. government and all the other fascist governments around the world who mandated these experimental products on people. Okay, but I'm finally going to see them because she says, but you're not vaccinated. You can't come. What if I get COVID? I'm like, no, but you're vaccinated. So aren't you protected if that's what the COVID jabs were supposed to be for? She goes, but you can spread it. I'm like, how can I spread it? You're more likely, now that the studies are out, to spread it than I am because you were jabbed. I wish she wasn't. I asked her, please don't do that. Please don't do it on my daughter. She says she hasn't done any jabs on my daughter, but she did every single vaccine known to man on her, plus every flu shot since she was a little kid, which caused her to start her, I believe, allegedly, to start her, because it was right after she had to take, I believe it was the MMR, whatever vaccine she didn't have, the third jab, the third booster, which wasn't required for kids that were in first grade in Japan yet until they were in 8th grade, I believe. So she got it earlier than all of her classmates, and she started her period at 8 years old, shortly after that. So I believe it was because of that jab, but I have no proof. Anyway, so I'm going to go see them finally because the COVID queue's over somewhat. I don't know how Japan is reacting, but at least we're going to Guam. I'm stopping up in Japan to meet them and stay with them in a hotel for one night. Going to Guam for 3 days, coming back for one night in Tokyo, and then going back home. New York State's vast vaccine database, which is 365,502 children, shows that among children 5 to 11, Pfizer's mRNA, I don't know how anyone can give this experimental biological agent to 5 to 11-year-olds, but they force it on 365,000 kids. It's just disgusting. Pfizer's mRNA vaccine has a mere 12% of efficacy for 1 month after kids were fully vaccinated. This is footnote 75 and 76. Then, 5 weeks after becoming quote-unquote fully vaccinated, this age group is 40% more likely to be COVID infected than those children who never received the mRNA shots. So who would you rather be? The ones who never get it because you never got the shot? I would much rather be those people. That's footnote 77. To confirm this astonishing finding, see figure 2 below. And this is a huge figure. I'm not going to go through it, but it's like a whole graph thing. It's kind of small print, so I'd have to get my glasses on, but I don't have glasses. Okay. Within this figure, the dark gray represents 5 to 11-year-olds, whereas the light gray bar represents 12 to 17-year-olds. The y-axis is the relative incidence of COVID-19 in the unvaccinated compared to the vaccinated. The x-axis shows bars by increasing time intervals from the date of vaccination. Okay, so let's see. At the beginning, the unvaccinated are... Oh, I can't read it. I'll let him explain it. I don't like looking at graphs. Okay, so just after vaccination, i.e. less than 13 days, vaccine immunity peaks. And for a brief period, unvaccinated 5 to 11-year-olds are almost 3 times more likely to get COVID-19 compared to vaccinated. And unvaccinated 12 to 17-year-olds are over 4 times more likely to get COVID-19 compared to the vaccinated. However, immunity then wanes quickly and precipitously, shown by the consistent decrease in dark and light gray bars. I see how it works. Okay. So they also did this study with flu vaccines. So people who take flu vaccines are more likely to get the flu. And that's why they give you them free a lot of times, because they know you're going to come back for the medicines for the flu, so they can make more money off you by getting you vaccinated. So I've never taken a flu shot in my life. That's why when this flu shot came out for COVID, I'm like, why would I take a flu shot when I already had the flu? And it wasn't even that bad. I had it during the worst wave, which was the Delta wave. The only thing I needed to do is I needed to do a lot of energy healing on myself. I needed to take a lot of zinc. I needed to take a lot of vitamin C. I got a lot of sunlight. I got vitamin D. And my body, I muscle tested for oregano oil. So I took so much goddamn oregano oil for 3 or 4 days. I kept muscle testing how much my body wanted. I kept wanting more and more and more until my shit almost burned my asshole. Anyway, that's kind of gross, but that's how it's cleaning my body out. Okay, anyway. Of course, you have not read anything about this in corporate media reports, which is precisely why your first reaction might be to disbelieve the facts. Just like the people who didn't want to look into his telescope said the world can't be, even the scientists were saying that we can't be going around the sun. And like, why don't we look through my fucking telescope? I'm like, no, I'll go along with the Catholic Church. They're going to burn you, so I don't want to be burned. UK data similarly shows a dramatic rise in COVID susceptibility in vaccinated versus unvaccinated cohorts. So there was also a study that I read. I think the researcher came on to, I forget which podcast. I think it was Dr. What's his name? Dr. Sigalov, that showed that all the countries that get kids immunization shots are the countries that have more problems with autism, more problems with leukemia, more problems with heart disease, more problems with all these things that kids didn't have problems with prior to the vaccination schedules. So you can go to a country that's third world country and you see that they don't have all these autism problems. They don't have all these ADD problems. They don't have all these myocarditis problems. They don't have all this shit because, you know what? They don't get vaccinated. And they don't have polio. They don't have... The only time they get these diseases is when Bill Gates comes to town and gives them all experimental vaccines. And they also start having no kids. So that's what the whole... his dad... or it was his grandpa, was the main progenitor of eugenics during the time, which eugenics got a bad name, so they changed it to genetics, but it's basically the same thing. It's just how to create the right gene sequences to kill off the right populations you don't want inhabiting the planet anymore, so we can reduce the population, which is what the whole eugenics program has been since its inception. And Bill Gates' grandfather was his father, a big supporter of that, and Planned Parenthood, which originally was a eugenics program. They might do good things in present day. I don't know, because I don't really follow them. Because, anyway, I know their history. I'm going to go back to reading this. UK data similarly show a dramatic rise in COVID susceptibility in vaccinated versus unvaccinated cohorts. After a 6-month honeymoon, Vaccinated individuals suffer increased COVID risk compared to unvaccinated in every age group. This is footnote 78, 79, and 80. On March 20, 2022, the UK National Health Service stopped publishing these data after risk of COVID infection among vaccinated individuals in some age groups climbed past 300% over unvaccinated. This is footnote 81. Similarly, both CDC and the New York Times suspiciously stopped publishing daily postings of the vax versus unvaccinated case and death comparisons in March and April of 20, because it started going like this, and then the vaccinated started dying and being hospitalized more than the vaccinated. Like, oh, we got to stop this. It isn't going along with our party line to sell you experimental products that might kill you, allegedly. Okay. I know my dad died of drug overdose only after he probably took the vaccine, because he's taken every drug imaginable in his life and overdosed on many things. He's never died, but he did after taking the vaccine, I do believe, because he took everything medical. He believed everything the doctors told him. That's why he was a LSD maniac, because I wouldn't touch LSD. I touch natural shrooms, natural ayahuasca, stuff like that, if it's grown from a plant given to me by a natural healer. But I ain't touching nothing made by the CIA called LSD, or all the shit given out at their mind studies of MK Ultra studies called Burning Man and other things. Okay. The CDC has since released its unsubstantiated claim that there were twice as many new cases in the unvaccinated group in May 2022. CDC simultaneously promised to supply data to support this assertion and has thus far failed to publish those data. They just made that data. This is our sales pitch, because we are promoters of our vaccines, that we do get a kickback. They get a lifetime kickback from all the vaccines they approved, which should be illegal. In Japan, if you took a kickback from the corporation you were supposed to regulate, you would be pretty much barred from politics. But that's in America, it's just normal practice because we're all corrupt. New Zealand's health data show the triple vaccinated are more vulnerable to COVID infection and hospitalization than the unvaccinated. Israel data, that's footnote 85. So if you want me to read any of these footnotes, put it in the notes and I'll read it to you. But I'm not going to go. I know he's thoroughly documents all his studies. And he's the only one who does, because Dr. Fauci, in anything he writes or talks about, never talks about a study. I'm the word of science. No, you're not. You're a fucking lying sack of shit. Israeli data also showed disproportionate COVID infections among vaccinated. A study of 100,000 Qataris published in the New England Journal of Medicine on June 15, 2022, found that individuals vaccinated with 2 doses of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine were more likely to contract Omicron than the unvaccinated. Both vaccines dropped to negative efficacy 6 months after the second injection. Pfizer dropped to negative 3.4%, and Moderna dropped to negative 10.3%. And this is footnote 87 and 88. A British study published in Science in June 2022 sought to explain why vaccinated individuals are so much more susceptible to infection than the unvaccinated. Footnote 89. The paper concludes that the vaccines alter the body's all-important T-cell immunity by masking T-cell hypervigilance toward the original, now extinct Wuhan version of COVID-19, while diminishing their capacity to combat new variants like Omicron. Former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson summarizes the finding in the Science paper thus: in other words, the mRNA shots appear to permanently wrong-foot the immune system of people who receive them and bias them towards producing T cells to attack variants that no longer exist, even though they never were infected with those variants at all. This is footnote 90. Okay, so every single flu vaccine is for a flu that's already been in circulation, which means it's not going to work for the flu that you're going to get. It's going to make you more susceptible to the flu you're going to get, which is why all you people that keep injecting yourself with these keep getting infected. And I almost never get the flu. And I'm 52, and I've hardly ever go to the doctors. And every time they say take a medicine, I look up at the library before the internet. I used to look up at the library. The last time I went to the doctors, I used to go to libraries. But in Japan, for the 13 years I was in Japan, they would tell me, this is the medicine we're prescribing. I say, okay, what's the Compo, which is the Chinese natural medicine alternative? And they would always give me that, and that's what I'll buy. Forget your pharmaceutical poisons. They may be more susceptible to disease, which is why you're selling them to me. And you get a kickback from the pharmacy, which is attached to your clinic. Okay. This is what you see when you look in the telescope. Oh. This is what you see when you look into the telescope and follow the science government mandates of shoddy tested, heavily subsidized, rushed, zero liability vaccines that are causing more harm than good. In June 2022, I laid out all the available science and data that proves vaccinating children for COVID is not only unnecessary, but will recklessly endanger their lives. You can read that detailed description here. RFK's letter to FDA, VRBPAC members, children'shealthdefense.org/letter-FDA. You can read it there. So he laid out all the science that this is so dangerous to kids. You should never, ever be tested, because it's still a test. They haven't been approved. The only thing that's been approved by the FDA is Comirnaty, which doesn't exist in the United States. It's only in Europe. And it's because, and they say, oh, but the ones we have here are identical. No, they're not. If they were identical, they would be called Comirnaty, or whatever the fuck in that one that was approved. All the other ones are under what's called investigational new drug, IND laws. IND laws say you have to be told, if you're given these injections, which are falsely called vaccines, you have to be told that you're being entered into a medical experiment, and you have to ask, do you have any undue coercion, which means did your work ask you to do this, which is undue coercion. What's the other one? Undue. Oh fuck! I made a video about this. I forget the two names of them. But you can't be experimented on without realizing you're being experimented. You have to be told this is an experiment. We don't know if this is safe and effective because we haven't finished the experiment, because we haven't got approval. So it's still experimental. And we already got rid of all the placebo groups, so we won't know if they're ever effective, because we don't want to know. All we want to know is, do they make us a lot of money? Yes, they make us billions of dollars, which is why Pfizer, the most criminal organization of all pharmaceutical companies that have paid more money out in lawsuits for killing people unnecessarily in the last 20 years, is the one pushing this deadly product upon you and your family, and saying they care about your health, which is a total lie. Okay, we're going to read section 5. The most reliable data suggests that COVID vaccines do not lower risk of death and hospitalization. It's just a sales gimmick that they've been giving you. After having to relinquish all their early claims to efficacy against both infection and transmission, COVID vaccine promoters have more recently swiveled to advance the dubious premise that COVID vaccines at least reduce the risk of death and hospitalization. No, they don't. Hold on. Okay. For example, this article and this billboard repeat the common propaganda trope that unvaccinated are 16% more likely to die. It's the actual inverse of that. This is a marketing gimmick. And here is Sanjay Gupta, the lying sack of shit from NBC that a pothead comedian had to school on natural immunity, parroting the official and scientifically baseless government mantra that COVID vaccines are very close to 100% in terms of preventing deaths, end quote. This is footnote 93. This claim that vaccines are effective against serious illness and death appears to be a final anemic redoubt, R-E-D-O-U-B-T, redoubt, for defending the global mass vaccination enterprise. However, the peer-reviewed published literature from countries with the best data systems and the most widespread vaccine coverage explodes this assertion as yet another bait and switch. This study from Israel, the earliest and among the most vaccinated nations, shows 90.48% of hospitalized COVID patients fully vaccinated in July. This is footnote 94. Some 78% of Israelis were then fully vaccinated. Footnote 95. This means the vaccinated were actively more likely to end up hospitalized than the unvaccinated. Similarly, this February, which is 24th, 2022, UK government NHS study summarized in this article shows 90% of hospitalized British COVID patients are fully vaccinated, with 4 out of 5 of them triple vaccinated. This is footnote 96 and 97. At that time, 70.8% of Brits age 18 and over had received at least 3 doses. That's footnote 98. Furthermore, since the start of the Omicron wave in December 2021, overall death rates in England were higher in those doubly vaccinated 6 months prior than the unvaccinated. This is footnote 99. Likewise, government data from February 2022 from New South Wales, Australia, and summarized in this article show vaccinated make up 87% of cases, 87% of hospitalizations, and 77% of deaths among Australians. Footnote 100 and footnote 101, 2 different studies. By February 22, 2022, some 80.17% of Australians were vaccinated. That's footnote 102. Similarly, Ontario COVID death data show that Canadians who received a booster shot have a 50% greater death rate than those who received only 2 vaccines. So the more shots you get, the more likely you are to die. That's what all studies that I've read show. This is footnote 103. But of course, don't do your own research. Expect the experts to tell you what's right. The man on the TV. Many people will be understandably surprised or even resistant to acknowledging these realities. They are nonetheless realities. The failure of the mainstream media to report the truth does not change the truth. Comparisons of COVID death rates among more or less vaccinated nations also suggest that the vaccines do not prevent COVID deaths. For example, comparing 2 neighboring Caribbean nations, Haiti, with 1% vaccination coverage, suffered only 835,000 COVID deaths, footnote 104 and 105, while Cuba, with its slightly smaller population and 88% fully vaccinated, suffered a COVID death rate of 10 times greater, which is 8,529 per million. So, wow, that is more than 10 times. 800 to 8,000 per million. It's just insane. And it's just so black and white. It's so transparent if you're willing to actually study and not believe the man on TV who lies to you and sells you drugs that'll keep you passively watching the television for the rest of your life and killing yourself. U.S. media recently published a spate of articles reporting accounts from doctors that dying patients in Australia, American hospital, COVID wards are disproportionately unvaccinated. This is footnote 108. However, few, if any, of these reports are either peer-reviewed or published in scientific journals. They are instead anecdotal observations by COVID ward doctors. Their conclusions are likely artifacts of CDC's deceptive scheme to classify all patients as unvaccinated. If 2 weeks have not elapsed since their second vaccine injection, so what they're calling unvaccinated, when they're trying to say that unvaccinated are more likely to die or more likely to be hospitalized, it's because anyone who takes a jab, 6 months later, if they don't take the second jab, they classify them now as unvaccinated. So all these people that have been vaccinated are now called unvaccinated. You're going to have more people unvaccinated, which they're not really, dying of COVID. But if you compare all those people that have 1 jab, 2 jabs, 3 jabs, 4 jabs, 5 jabs, 6 jabs, 7 jabs, with those who have never had any jabs, you're not going to get any. You're going to get a super difference in deaths. You're going to get all these people that have been jabbed. The more they're jabbed, the more they die. That's basically all the science is showing. Because this is a depopulation agenda that they've been talking about for years, and they've been planning. Go look up Operation Lockstep and tell me they haven't been planning everything that they did during the COVID coup exactly lockstep, like they rehearsed it. Furthermore, following CDC recommendations, hospitals classify all patients as unvaccinated who fail to report vaccine status upon hospital admission. If, for example, they are distressed, confused, or unconscious, nurses and doctors on closed COVID wards seeing unvaccinated designations on the charts of intubated patients, INTUBATEDMS, they're out unconscious, I don't know what that word means, patients may naturally assume that these are accurate descriptions, but they're not always. In any case, it is difficult to reconcile any anecdotal claim against hard data from other countries showing the opposite result for the exact same vaccines. I'm already on page 43. That means I'm halfway done with this book, and I just started reading it this morning. I read last night on my Facebook page. All of it I'm reading on my Facebook page. I'm going to upload it all to my Rumble. Unless the author or the publisher asks me to stop doing it, and I'll take them down. But I'm sure they're wanting me to promote this because everyone else is not promoting it. They're trying to actively keep you from knowing the truth. 6. This is the section 6. High injury and death rates from COVID vaccines may cancel out even the most exaggerated claims of vaccine efficacy. A May 2022 preprint in the scientific journal The Lancet made the sobering finding that while vaccines may slightly reduce COVID deaths, at least in the short term, they still produce no mortality advantage. Footnote 109. FDA and CDC's voluntary injury surveillance system lends credence to this finding. Come on. What do I got? Do I got it? Do I got it? Do I got it? Do I got it? Come on. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. God damn it. What the hell? It's thinking. 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 Okay, I'm not going to look at it. You can think all you want, biatch. Network error. Stupid ass mofos. Okay. A May 2022 reprint in the scientific journal The Lancet made the sobering finding that while vaccines may slightly reduce COVID deaths, at least in the short term, they still produce no mortality advantage. Footnote 109. FDA and CDC's voluntary injury surveillance system lends credence to this finding. Okay, I just read up to that. This revelation should have been fatal to the mass vaccination rollout and should have immediately ended all government and private efforts to compel vaccination, just like it did during the other COVID coup, swine flu epidemic in 1978. Go watch the 60-minute documentary on YouTube or elsewhere. How they almost was identical to this one. They just tried to roll it out then and no one believed it. And after the studies came out, like this study, they said, oh my God, what are we doing? We failed. And that's what they should have done during this one. But instead they locked down and doubled down and kept lying and lying and lying. Now they're keep lying, and now they're all going to soon find themselves under court order to show up to the Nuremberg trials for their mass extinction event that they're trying to cause. But then, a month later, in June 2022, another devastating Lancet reprint concluded that mRNA, not messenger RNA, but modified RNA, if you were a health conscious person before this pandemic and you thought, oh yeah, I don't want to put modified organisms in my body, which are, what do we call them? GMO. I don't know, GMO. Well, now you're putting GMO vaccines in your body that are known to change your genetic makeup according to their patents, which you can go on the podcast After Hours to see the patents. He reads all the patents. So you can know that. Why would they put in the patents of the products that they're selling you, lying to you about, if they didn't say what they said in the patents that they said they did? Why would they patent something and say this does this to your genes, but it doesn't really do that because that's not in our sales pitch? Okay, but then a month later, in June 2022, another devastating Lancet reprint concluded that mRNA vaccines are causing more serious injuries and hospitalizations than they are averting. That's called negative efficacy, which all these have. Quote, the excess risk of serious adverse events of special interest from mRNA vaccines surpassed the risk reduction from COVID-19 hospitalization relative to the placebo group for both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, end quote. This is from the Lancet study. The authors of this study include some of the most esteemed eminences in the scientific pantheon, including UCLA's iconic statistician and epidemiologist. Oh, that was a loud one. Okay, I'll have $300 for today. This is my third one, almost $100. It's a good day today. I had almost $300 yesterday. But I had a shitty Friday and Thursday were damn shitty. I spent all day waiting for calls mostly. That's what happens. It rains and it shines. Okay, where was I? The authors of this study, okay, we already said that this is amazing. Dr. UCLA's iconic statistician and epidemiologist, Dr. Sander Greenland, Dr. Patrick Wieland from UCLA, and the BM senior editor, Dr. Peter Doshi, D-O-S-H-I, and others. These scientists base their devastating... hold on. Let's see if I'm going here or there. Oh, I'm going Whole Foods Hillcrest. I gotta go. Okay. I had another good delivery from Whole Foods Hillcrest a little while ago. These scientists base their devastating conclusions on the meticulously reanalysis of the clinical trial data for those two vaccines. In any rational universe, this paper would ring the death knell for mRNA vaccines and trigger an immediate moratorium on public health recommendations for these products. Footnote 110. But of course, we're living during psychopathic times where deadly criminals run our government, including Pfizer previous executives that run. And how many people from the FDA resigned because of this COVID mandate? That should make you suspicious. And how many doctors were willing to lose their job because they weren't willing to be experimented on by these deadly pathogens causing injections, yeah, that would make me question